Good morning, Top Wolf. Welcome. Welcome to the stream today. Good to see you. Morning, Uchu. Good morning. Good morning, Oyman. Welcome. Good morning, Pig. Good morning. Welcome. Morning, G-Man. Good to see you. Good morning, Brandon. Welcome. So I want... Morning, Fuzzy. Welcome. So for those of us who are here, would you just like to update me on how assignment 2 is going? I see some chat in the Discord, and I promise you this assignment is not super hard, but maybe a few people are just struggling with the concept of functions and objects together. And it's probably a little difficult because there's a main that's provided for you. But I don't know how you guys feel about that. You don't really get to see it in action. That main is already provided for you, and the objects are already all declared, so you're just kind of like filling in code. Looks like so far pretty good. You need to work out in the OH. Yeah, you can't really see the program in action until all the functions are done. That's true. But you are welcome to make your own main function. Did you know? You can make your own main function and kind of test it. Maybe after class today or whenever I have time, I can upload something like that. It's actually very easy to do that. You just have to declare your own CPP file, your main CPP file, and you include that header file, and then you can declare the object. You can declare the object. Top Wolf asks, does any function only need one line of code? I know at least 3 of them have 1 line of code. Maybe 4. There's some getters and setters in there, yeah? Fuzzy, we mentioned a getter and a setter yet, but I'll start off class with that today, alright? Because I uploaded that 20-minute video to talk about the assignment, and I kind of crammed some stuff in there about const functions. So I'll do a little review of that today. So I will mention getters and setters. And yeah, my PC did get rid of... I guess we're saying it's Deborah who did it. My PC's been good. I did a nice little restart. I checked for viruses and stuff. I cleaned up some things. I think today we're going to have a smooth stream. So hopefully that goes over well. The PC probably doesn't need to hydrate. But as you can see, my glasses are a little foggy here. So maybe I need to. All right. So, what are we going to start with? Well, I guess I'll turn on the screen here. And let me just review some stuff. Now, before I do that, I just want to let you guys know we are just a little bit behind. So, I'm just going to be doing my best here to keep moving forward. You're welcome to ask questions as always. If it's something about previous stuff, like I know some of you are struggling with the object stuff, you need to come to office hours, or you need to come talk to me. You need to schedule a time, because I would love to kind of go over that stuff in class, but we do need to catch up a little bit. Yeah, we're just a little bit behind the other CS202 classes, and I'm looking at my previous material, and we got hung up a little bit. We're about a day behind or so. And that's not your fault by any means. I'm just throwing it out there that we're going to need to move here just a little bit. So some subjects will be maybe a little more condensed. And I want it to be your job to come to office hours if you need. I know some of you have been doing that, and I know some of you are not doing that. And I don't want you to feel sorry for yourself. I want you to schedule a time to come talk to me or go talk to Angelica. All right. We've only got so much time in this class. As you know, this is a university class. And so even though I briefly touch on objects in class, you're going to need to take some time to understand them yourself. All right. So with that out of the way, we're going to just we'll talk about getters and setters. And we're going to briefly talk about some of the things I talked about in that 20-minute video or so that I uploaded. I don't know. Is that how big I normally make it? Well, all right. So, yeah, Top Wolf. So let me talk about that then. Let me talk about that. So the first thing we're going to quickly talk about is just that default constructor. There is a constructor in that code that has a default parameter. Now, I already talked about this, but I just want to briefly remind you what is going on with that thing. Okay? So, on last class, we just introduced constructors. And I showed you that we can have multiple constructors. I'm sure you guys all hopefully remember that. And as we have multiple constructors, they can take, the reason we have multiple constructors is so that they can take different parameters. That's the whole point. And so I kind of gave you that example of with a string. And so if we look in our point2D example here, you notice that I've included two constructors. And this one is a default constructor, in the sense that it's going to initialize whatever object we declare with the default to be, say, 0, 0. Let me see where I wrote that code. Right, so this is our default constructor, and so whenever this object comes to life, we're going to make sure that its values get initialized. As you guys probably know, some of you from assignment 1 maybe forgot to initialize some variables, such as the dictionary size. And if you do that, you may have some garbage value in there. So a default constructor is very good to kind of just initialize things to be some default value. But what if we wanted to create our object and initialize it with some other values? Well, that's where the parameter constructor comes in. Notice it's here, in which it's going to take, I don't know why I named it this way. I get all mixed up all the time. Where it takes some parameters, and what those parameters will do is they will actually initialize the actual object variables, the instance variables, to be a copy of these values. So just to remind you here, notice that this P1 here is declared. Notice there's no parameters provided here. There's no parameters. So the default constructor will be called, and it will be 0, 0, unless, of course, we call this setXY function later. Now, this one down here is declared, and it's declared with some parameters. So it's going to go into the blueprint. It's going to go into the class and figure out which constructor it should call. Notice it finds a match here with the two integers, and it's going to initialize x to be, that's the wrong one, it's going to be initializing x to be a copy of the first parameter and y to be a copy of the second parameter. Now in the assignment, you only have one constructor here, and it's a confusing one. Now I did talk to the other instructor about this because this is just a little bit confusing, but this constructor kind of doubles as a default and a parameter constructor. So I will show you that just in the code real quick. I can basically combine these two things to become one thing. Now in the future I won't be doing this. But in a sense, this constructor is going to handle two things. So this constructor has default values. So if parameters are provided, they will actually go in place of this. But if parameters are not provided, then they will fill them in with zeros. So this doubles as a default or a param. So let me see if I know what I'm talking about here. Notice that the parameter list is integer, integer. And if we come look in the point2d here, we no longer have a default constructor. So I'm going to comment that out. But notice that this matches here. So in main, we should call this P1 here. This will be initialized with the default constructor. And it's going to go look to see if it can find a constructor that matches. In this sense, it kind of does because we have some default values here. It will say, all right, I'll just fill these in with zeros. I'll just fill these in with zeros. But if I end up providing some, like I do here, it'll say, all right, screw the zeros. I want this to be a 3 and I want this to be a 4. So if we go to Bobby here and just check it out, hopefully I know what I'm talking about and I don't run into any compiler errors. That's kind of, C++ is full of these things, these little tricks. And I like to stay away from teaching them as much as I can because that's where the confusion comes from. And next thing you know, it pops up here in the assignment and you're like, wow, why are you there? What does that mean? So I just want to clear that up. That is acting as two constructors. So let's try and make here. Hopefully it works. Woo, it works. Okay. And then if we run it, you'll notice that the parameter constructor here is called twice. It's called twice. Now recall, I put that little print statement in there, right? It's called twice. But you're saying, what the heck? I called this with the default constructor. There's no parameters provided. How come it called the parameter constructor? Well, we've got some default values here. So just fill them in. Does that make sense? Doctor, you're welcome. Do I need to spend any more time on that? Do you guys understand what's going on there? If you check the main of that assignment, I'll even pull it up for you real quick. You'll see that some of the objects, go look in main, okay? If you don't know what's going on, go look in main. Notice that this object here is declared with a default. But if you come down here, some of them are declared with parameters. So this one constructor is getting called both times. It's getting called in both cases, all right? So that's what that is. And if you watch that 20-minute little video, I did put it in the notes, all right? It's in there somewhere. I assure you. I think I put it down here at the bottom. Constructor with default parameters, okay? So I did talk about that. Now let's talk about the const. Can anyone tell me what it means for a function to be const? Does anyone know? Can anyone tell me? Because I did mention this. What does it mean for a function to be const? Almost. Almost. Chef, I like Chef's answer the most. And in some sense, the rest of you are kind of right. But what can't be changed? What can't be changed? The const, and I'll kind of pull up the notes here. The const, I've got so many notepads open. Where did I put it? The const. So let's talk about this. There's something called a getter and a setter. So let's kind of introduce this idea. Now, this is not kind of like, this is not like your functions are only getters or only setters. You're going to have some other functions that don't fall in these categories. But there's quite a few functions that are included with your class that will be called getters and setters. Now, a getter, another fun word for that is a read-only variable. That's a read-only variable. And a setter is basically just a function that sets the value of some member. I should use actual English in the class, in the object. All right? So that's just what a getter and a setter is. And so if we're going to add some getters to this function here, and Chef, you're right. If I'm going to add some getters to this function here, I'm going to take these out because I don't like them. I don't like those default value things. I'm going to add some getters and setters to this function here. I already kind of have a setter here, but let's do some getters. So let's say I want to add a get x and a get y. So recall that these are private. So in main, if I wanted to say, hey, can I please see out p1.x, it will not be okay with that because x is private. It's going to say, no, I'm not allowed to do this. And the reason we're making it private is because we don't want someone to come in here and just say, hey, you know what? I want x to be 40. I would prefer that person to use, say, our setXY function. All right? So that's why it's private. So it's like, well, what if I want to see it? Why can't I just see it? Well, we can make a read-only variable. And that's what a getter does. So I'm going to do something here. What type is x? What type is x? Well, it's an integer. So that's probably going to be the type of our getter. And I'll call it getX. Now, I'm going to ask you guys, do you think this getter is going to, and by the way, Top Wolf, this is a one-liner. This is a one-liner right here. Do you think that this function will be changing the object? So say here I'm in main, and I say, hey, call p1.getX. Does this function here alter the object in any way? Or should it alter the object in any way? That's what I'm saying. So P1 consists of an X and a Y. So whenever I call getX, you think the X and the Y will change? The answer is no, right? It's just reading. It's just a read-only variable. You're all right. So we can make the compiler enforce that by saying this is constant. This function cannot alter the object at all. It cannot alter the object. And I promise you, I can make the compiler yell at me. If I say x equals 10 here, look, I specified this to be constant. And so the moment I try to do something to the object, like change its variable, the compiler, I can make it yell at me. This is a safe coding practice here. Say your boss is the person who wrote the .h file. And then all the minions out there who are working, that is not the one that I wanted. Whoops. That's not the one I wanted. Say all the minions are out there working, and they say, I'm going to put some code in here. And they try to compile it, and they said, hey, boss said that this function has to be const. Look. So boss says that this is a read-only object. All right, it's in a read-only member function. All right, so basically we can enforce that. All right. So what do const member functions do? That's a test question that I'll ask. What do const member functions do? Well, they prevent you from changing the object. Now, some of you will ask if I'm going to declare this outside. I saw this as a question in the Discord. If I'm going to declare it outside of the class, say in my CPP file, I'm having some errors. What's going on? Well, let's remember how to do this. What type is this function? Well, it is an integer. And what scope are we in? Well, we're looking in the point2D scope. And what's the function called? Well, it's called getX. And then I just put the body here. And I say, hey, why is my compiler not... Can anyone tell me? Why is my compiler not compiling? Why is this mad at me? While I'm at it, I'll go ahead and add a get y. Someone tell me why the compiler's mad at me. I need to put the constant. That's exactly right. So it's just a little syntax thing here. You have to put the constant on the end of it. All right. So I think I did include that. Whoops. Don't yield processor. I think I did include that also in our notes. Which one are we working with? So let's kind of review this real quick while I'm looking. Member functions that alter the object are called mutators. So setters are mutators. Now, we have a setter in our code already, right? Where is it? Here it is. Set xy. That's a setter. All right, that's a setter. Now, const member functions cannot alter the object. Any const member function needs the keyword const after the parameter list in both the header and the definition, okay? So I've included that, and that's what a const function is. Does anyone have any questions about that before I move on? Do you guys understand what the const means? And in general, not always, but in your assignment, some of these things are constant. Get initial bank amount, get bank amount, play on. Some of these are going to be one-liners. In general, const functions, they don't do much. They might do a little bit more. It's completely up to the programmer, but hey, in this assignment, maybe a little hint here. This one is not a one-liner, as I'm sure some of you know, but this one might be a one-liner. I'm not sure, though. I'll have to review. But maybe this one and this one here for sure are one-liners, right? These are just little getters. Little one-liners. All right. Read initial. So the read initial, all it does is it asks the user to input from the stream. And you're looking, so the 26 constructor, the read initial bank amount, and the set initial bank amount, all three of these functions are constructor and two functions. They do almost the exact same thing. Now, some of the error messages might be a little bit different, but they all pretty much do the exact same thing. This one initializes the object. So this one only gets called when the object is declared. That's a constructor. So that only happens when the object comes to life. In main, as I showed you, whenever an object is declared, that's when this is called. The read initial bank amount is going to do the same thing, except the object is already alive. The constructor has already been called for that object. It's alive. And it's asking the user to enter the bank amount through the input stream. You did that in your assignment 1. So you're going to have a while loop in here, and you're going to ask that user to input some initial bank value, and once you've confirmed that it's correct, you'll overwrite the initial bank amount. Set initial bank amount does the same thing, except this time it doesn't prompt the user for an input, it actually takes it. You could almost call, and I'm just saying, you could almost call set initial bank amount inside the constructor and maybe inside read initial bank amount. So let me ask this. Let me just kind of take a quick sidetrack. Do you understand that? Let me come up with a fun function here. Let's say I make two really quick setters. I'm going to make a void set x, x1, and I'm going to make a void set y, int y1. Now just pretend that these functions do exactly what they say. I just want to confirm that you know this because it's going to happen in your assignment. You know this yes or no function, it's going to be called from some other function. So I just want to confirm that we know that something is going on here. Y equals y1. Now I made a mistake here. Can anyone tell me what my mistake is? What was my mistake here? What's wrong with these functions? And you can tell because the x and the y, they're white. Basically saying, yeah, there you go. Thank you. Glad to see some of that's making it through, right? There we go. Now, Notice that I have these two quick little setters. They're not going to be constant because they are mutators. Now, say in this function, do you guys know that I can do this? And what might be confusing here is that in main, so I'm going to ask you this question here. In main, if I declare another point 2D P3, and I say P3 dot set X, say 3, notice that I have to use an object to get to that function, right? Because this set X is declared within the class, right? It's a class. Here it is, set X. So I need an object to call that function. P3 is our object, and I'm setting X to be 3. So why is it here I don't need the object? Does anyone have any ideas? Can you tell me why I don't need an object to call it here? Does anyone understand? Why don't I need an object to call these functions from here? But why do I need an object from here? Because we're calling it a member function. Because the function is inside the class. Chef and Uchu, you're right. Now think about it this way. Say I call set xy here. It's inside the class. Think about it this way. I'm P3. I'm the caller. P3 is the object, or the caller, whatever you want to call it. So P3 calls set xy. So we go into that code, and boom, here I am. And at this point, I know that I'm P3. I know that I'm P3. So when I call set xy, it's like there's an imaginary little P3 going here because I know where I'm at. I know exactly where I'm at because I already called a function to get inside of the class. So you're all exactly right in a sense that it's inside the class. So does anyone have any problems with that? Does anyone have any issues with that? Do I need to explain that a little more? Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. All right, and that happens in your assignment. You're going to be calling that yes or no function from inside some of the other functions. Okay? So now we're going to move forward. We're moving forward. Now we're going to talk about just one more thing today in classes, and then we're moving on to inheritance. Okay, so Synthos, that's kind of a good comment there so there's a few things that are kind of involved with that. You only need the access operator. There's kind of two of those. There's the dot operator, and there's the scope resolution operator. And that's correct. You only need the access operator from main to access the class. Now, actually, that you've answered that, let me go ahead and finish this talk up here about statics. Can anyone remind me what a static member is? Can anyone remind me what a static member is? What does that mean? Do you guys recall? Not quite. Chef, you're kind of right. Synthos is more right. Synthos is exactly right. Now, the address is always the same. Synthos is exactly right. Something static is shared by all objects of the class. So that's the difference between an instance and a static variable. So these are instance variables, meaning each object has their own x and y, yet all objects will share this one thing called point count. So here we're talking about this function. Let's do a distance function. Now, help me out here. I did take math, I promise, but I've long since forgotten it. This is static. So let me ask you this. If this function is static, will I be calling it from an object? Now, I'm not asking can you, but is there an object associated with this function? Is there an object associated with this function? So I would say, Kate says no, question mark, and the answer is kind of yes and no. The only objects associated with it are the ones that are passed as parameters. But this is a static function, meaning that, here, this might really, look at this. I'm going to make the compiler cry. So we're inside the class, right? I'm inside the class, so I should be able to access X and Y. So I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to say int new X. And help me out here with my distance function. I guess I could Google it. Oh, Google. Oh, no, my computer. Oh, why? I figured it out, guys. You guys can hear me? I figured it out, I think. Okay, please. I figured it out. It's Google Chrome. It's Google Chrome. I'm gonna close Chrome. That's what happens. Google Chrome is ruining. Google Chrome is Deborah. That's what it is. Google Chrome is Deborah. All right, the distance formula. All right. So new X is going to be equal to, we'll take, say, well, which X are we talking about? Let's just try that to begin. All right, goodbye, Google Chrome. I'm removing you. Okay, we're all back. So, let's say I do this, int new X equals X. And you know what, I'm going to save it. I'm going to take it to Bobby, and let's compile it. Can anyone tell me what X? Can anyone tell me what X I'm talking about here? Do we know what X? So this is telling me something here. Let's see. What's it telling me? Did I say it was a float? Probably made that mistake, huh? Maybe I didn't. There it is. Am I making my point, though, here? What? So when you say x1, can anyone change that? So in this distance formula, I'm going to need to reference, say, an x1 and an x2. Can anyone change them? Can you make the code so it's not called x1? X1 is nothing that exists. But there's 2 points up here, right? There's the left point and the right point. Can anyone convert these x1s into the left point and the right point for me? This x does not exist, or the compiler doesn't know what we're talking about because this is a static function. There's no object associated with it. So this x is basically saying this is just some random x. That's kind of what it's indicating. It should compile. See, Chef, yeah, that's exactly right. So, this is going to be kind of hard for us to wrap our heads around, so let's make our brains big here if we can. I'm going to try this again. I think I know why I'm getting this error, but it's not telling me... There we go. Yep, that's the error I wanted. Look at this. Invalid use of member X in static member function. Look at this. It says invalid use of member. It says this is a static thing. It says I don't know what you're talking about. Who is this associated with? What X does this mean? So what we do is we say, hey, L.X and L.Y, or R.X. I'm sorry, everybody. And I can say int new Y is equal to L.y plus R.y. Now, let me ask you this question. These are private members. Do I have access to them here? What do you think? These are private members. Do I have access to them? Whoa. Do I have access to them? Am I there? Am I alive? I think so. G-Man says no. Chef says yes. Now, I'm going to give you the hint. Are you ready? Are we inside the class here? Right? We're inside of a class. If we go back to our notes and check out our definition of private, only members and objects of the class can access this member. So that's exactly right. This is, even though this is static and there's no object associated with it, it has access to object stuff. So I'm totally allowed to access these things. 100% I'm allowed to access these things. All right. I don't know how much I want to finish this up. Maybe I can just include CMath real quick. I got to get my thing right. This is just the distance function, okay? Don't even... I'm just doing a quick distance function. We don't really need to talk about why or how it works. I just want to make sure that it's indicated here that it's doing that. These are the squares. That's the square right there. And then if I remember, I think I multiply them or add them together. Result equals new x plus new y. And then I return, say, the square root of the results. Okay. So let's say that works, okay? Now in main, if I want to take the distance between two functions, now I'm going to ask you guys again, can I call static members or can I reference static members from an object? Is that allowed? Yeah, so we'll start with that. Is that allowed? This is a static thing. Am I allowed to do this? Yes. Is that a yes or no? Am I allowed to do that? Yes, I am. Can you tell me why I don't like that? Can anyone tell me why that's confusing? Why is that confusing? Why? Oh, why is that confusing? No one wants to bite? Yeah, it looks like... Okay, Synthos, you're right. Thank you for entertaining me. It looks like this belongs to P2. It makes it look like this is kind of an instance member, right? So if I wanted to change this, I'm going to say, hey, just do this, please. I really don't like it when you do that. I would much rather you do that. And that really indicates to me that this is a static... Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I want to indicate that this is a static function. It's not associated with any object. It's just there. Okay. So let's compile it just to make sure everything works. And then we're going to move on to destructors. Uchu, the truth is, well, thanks for telling me. Google Chrome decided to mess up my day here. So we're just gonna deal with it because I like to keep the YouTube videos together. Otherwise, I have to whip out my Vegas movie studio and put things together and render it, and then my computer's going to be mad at me. We all know how it is. Is that right? I don't know if it is. Well, let's pretend that's right, okay? Let's pretend that's right. I'll let you debate that on Reddit. I just know that Chrome is better than Firefox. I used to use Firefox all the time, and then websites stopped working for me. I would go to a website with Firefox, and like the website just wouldn't work. And I would contact customer support, and they would say, "Do you have Chrome?" I was like, "No." They said, "Well, you should get Chrome." I said, "Okay." So, now we're going to talk about destructors. Destructors. Oh, Opera. The gamer browser. All right, get off subject here. So, if we know what the constructor is, can anyone tell me what or when the destructor is called? Can anyone tell me that? What is the destructor? What is it called? It's a body of code, that's true. What is the destructor? What is that thing? What is the destructor? What kind of questions do we ask? Let me check my notes. Chef, I like that. Uchu, I like that. It is a body of code. It's a function-like body of code. Now, recall, this is... Some of you guys are really struggling with the idea of a constructor and a destructor. And you say, when do I call them? You never call them on purpose. It's not like you invoke the constructor because you want to. You have no choice. If you're going to create an object, the constructor is going to be called. So when I say function like, I mean like it's like a function in the sense it's going to go back to your class and it's going to say, "Hey, I'm creating an object. I'm going to execute this body of code here because you're telling me to do that." So you don't call the I mean, you kind of do, but you're not just going to call the constructor. It just happens. Same with the destructor. You don't call it, it just happens. And so it's a function-like body of code that is called whenever an object is deallocated. Now, don't worry about that word yet. We'll get to it. Or it goes out of scope. In layman's terms, that is when the object is done with, when it dies. When the object dies, when the program exits. When does that happen? You go return from a function. The program ends. You go past a closing bracket. Something like that. It's in the same scope. So I'm going to show you some of this code I'm about to type really might make things click for you. Now I'm not going to ask this yet. Actually, I'll just give it to you. Can we have more than one destructor? No, we can't. Because with a constructor, you can kind of choose which one to call. But when an object dies, you don't have a choice on how it dies. It just goes out. So there's only one. There's only one destructor. It does not take parameters. And so how is it coded? Ugh. It's the name of the class with no parameters and a tilde up front. So again, an example of that. I wouldn't refer to the destructor. I'd say an object can only die once. The destructor is responsible for doing stuff while it's... I mean, you guys aren't uncomfortable with me using that term die, right? I think it kind of it helps me understand it. Now, actually, I want to take a step back here. CS202 student says it initializes everything back to 0. I wouldn't say that, but when we get to, say, dynamic memory, meaning during the runtime, we're going to request memory from the operating system, the destructor will be responsible for returning it back to the operating system. So destructors are very important, and I like kind of how you're thinking there. So this is just going to be the name of class, and it looks like that. That's the destructor. So let's go make a destructor for our object, and let me show you how it works. So I always put the constructors up front, and then I put the destructor as the very next thing. That's my favorite thing to do. So what's that look like? It's a tilde point 2D. That's our destructor. That's our only destructor. An object can only die one way, and this is how it dies. So, just for fun, where are my constructors? Here they are. Let's do the destructor. Remember, constructors and destructors, they don't have a type. I guess I should include that in our notes. That'd probably be nice. Like a constructor does not have a type. Now, lucky for you, I was able to save this until after the assignment, because in your assignment, your class does not have a destructor specified. But this is kind of important to note. I'll just kind of include this as a little tidbit here at the end. All classes and structs you declare without, I guess I'll call them CTORs and I'll remain consistent. All classes and structs you declare without constructors and destructors will have some defined for them automatically. Here, we'll do it this way. So there's always a destructor and a constructor around. For every class, detour. For every class and struct you define, there is always at least one constructor and destructor. We'll have one CTOR and one detour defined for them automatically. Now, they don't really do anything, but there is a function that gets called somewhere. All right? So what's this one going to do? Well, it's probably not going to say anything, but here's what it could do. It could say goodbye. Now I'm going to show you something even a little bit more fun. I'm going to give each object their own ID. Are you okay with that? I'm going to give each point its own ID. Now, with everything we have in this class already, can anyone tell me, is there a good variable I have that will help me set the ID? For example, let's say I declare P1. I want this point's ID to be 1. As soon as I declare P2, I want this point's ID to be P2, or just 2. As soon as I declare P2 down here, I want its ID to be 3. Do we have a variable that's keeping track of that stuff for us? It might be kind of a hard question that I'm asking. I kind of get out of my head a little bit here every now and then. And there is a delay. We do have the statics, right? Yeah, you guys are on top of it. We do have the static. We have that static thing. Point count. So let's say every time I declare a point... Well, actually, you know what? I'm gonna make 2. I'm gonna make 2. Because what's one thing we should do in the destructor? Well, as soon as we lose a point, we should probably deduct the point count. Do you agree with that? Every time we create a point, we're going to say, hey, we've got more. Every time we say goodbye to a point, let's say we lose it. but I kind of want the IDs to remain unique, so I'm just gonna English. I'm gonna declare another one called ID count, and that will just be endlessly running. What do you say? That will just continuously go up. And let's even make it fun. Let's say, hey, it starts at 100, something like that. Just like our NSHE IDs. They're like in the millions by now, something like that. Let's get it to start at something fun here. So every time we create one, let's say that the ID, I don't know how I named it, and I can't see because of IntelliSense, is equal to the ID count. I'm going to do a plus there. Please tell me if that's kind of a 135 topic. I hope you know that's a 135 topic. If that line of code confuses you, please let me know. And let's say when I say goodbye to this point, I will print its ID. I will say, hey, what is your ID, sir or ma'am? What is your ID? Sorry, I'm just moving things around here. Just moving things around. So let's go ahead and run this code, and let's just kind of identify where we are in the code. I didn't lose you guys, right? Please tell me if I lost you here. I just declared another static. I'm giving them all IDs. All right, so let's look at our code. I'll slide it over here a little bit. That's probably good. So in main, the very first thing we do is we declare point P1. Notice that the default constructor is called. Default constructor is called. Then it assigns the ID. Check it out, it's 100. And then the next thing that happens is another point is declared. Another default constructor is called, but this time point P3 gets ID 101. And then I say P3 set whatever. P1, I'm going to print it. Notice the default constructor initialized it to be 0, 0. And we have 2 points in the program. 2 points in the program. Then we try getX here. P1's getX is 0, obviously. And then, bam, look at that. We call the parameter constructor. Notice we got another ID here. That's 102. We call toString, and what do you know? We've got 3 points in the program. I then calculate some distance here. And then, whoa, what the heck happened there? That looks like one too many destructors called, huh? That looks like one too many constructors called. That looks like one too many constructors called. So let me see. Let's have a learning opportunity here. Look at this. And I'm giving you a hint, but I want to see if someone knows. There are 5 destructors called. But if we look in main, we only have 1, 2, 3 objects. 1, 2, 3 objects. Why were there 5 destructors called? Why were there 5 of them? And it has something to do with this. Does anyone have any ideas? It has something to do with that. What about that? What about that? You guys are about to learn so much, by the way. Prepare to open your minds to understanding. Does anyone have any idea what is going on with that function? Look, I put a checkpoint there. Does anyone know what's going on? So, yes. Let's see. Destructors get called when you exit the distance between. Yes, that's correct, but why? Why? What is this? How are these parameters passed? How are they passed? Can anyone tell me? And for some of you who don't quite understand this, this is a good time to pay attention. How are these passed? What do we call this? What is this? What is the term for this? What is the CS135 term for this? This is called pass by what? I'll wait for it. I know we got a delay, but you need to know it's not by it's not by reference. It's passed by value. Passed by value. Right? Yeah. Giovanni, you nailed it. So guess what? You know what happens here? Copies get made. These are copies. And we're not talking about this thing yet, but there are copy constructors called here. And we're not talking about those yet. Don't worry about it. There's a copy constructor called here that makes a copy of the parameters. And when we return from the function, the destructors for these parameters are called. Now watch, I'll fix it. What's that meme where like it's like they take the, I don't know, I don't want to offend anybody. They take like a lotus flower or something and they put it on top of the cat's head and it like shrinks back. And then they send it through space and they play that song. I'm probably talking, I hope I'm talking your language here. I don't know if I am. Looks like I fixed it. So, the point being here, pass by value calls constructors. Pass by reference does not create copies of those. It does not create copies of those objects. So if we make copies of those objects by passing by value, then you'll notice that those destructors get called at the end of the function. So I fixed it there. Now let me show you this. This is going to be really fun. This is my favorite part of class all year. If anything makes this click, it's going to be this. Hello? Did I misspell you? Did I get something wrong? I don't think I did. No, I didn't. So I'm declaring something inside the for loop there. Did you see that? Did you see I declared a point inside the for loop? What the heck is going on here? What is that? Did you guys see that? What the heck happened there? So what happens here? We have a for loop. First thing that prints is that line. And then what? We declare an object, a default object. And notice it got, its ID is 103. And then what? We print another line. And then what's this? We go out of scope. What happens when we go out of scope? The destructor gets called. So constructor gets called. Destructor gets called. So the for loop executes again. We get a brand new one, default constructor. And then the destructor is called. And then we get a brand new one. And then we say goodbye to it. And then we get a brand new one. And then we say goodbye to it. The destructor gets called whenever an object goes out of scope. Whenever it goes out of scope. So that's pretty much all I've got for you on that. We're going to be using destructors and constructors for the rest of this class. You're not going to get away from them. So just keep in mind, we'll talk about destructors and inheritance especially. But do you guys kind of understand the idea of a destructor? Do you understand the idea of a destructor? And notice down here we say goodbye to all of our other points. These are all of our other points, right? They're outside of the for loop. They are declared outside of the for loop. So this for loop scope does not apply to that point. But this scope here applies to that point. Scope is the brackets. So whenever I'm doing a screen share session with you, some of your guys' code is terrible in the sense that you've got like the spacing is all mixed up like this. And I'm not saying you in particular, but I'm saying some of you do this, and I'm telling you to stop that because scope is what's inside of the brackets. So main has its own scope. Main has its own scope. And where does its scope start? The scope starts here at the bracket. And anything within those brackets belongs to that scope. So that's why you tab it over. If you do that, I don't know what is going on because as soon as I scroll past main, I don't know what is going on here. So you tab it in. You tab it in. And so everything that belongs to main's scope is tabbed in. So main has its scope and everything inside of main is... So for example, when main starts, it has its own window. It has its own memory. And main has a P1. Main has a P3. Main has a P2. And then down here, that's the end of main's scope. For loop here. This for loop here has its own scope. Where does the scope start? It starts at this bracket. Everything inside of it is tabbed in because it belongs to the for loop. And then once you go past the bracket, it's outside of the scope. Anything that's in there is no longer within... I'm probably confusing you more as I talk. So this P4 belongs to the for loop scope. This P4 is declared within the for loop. And when I talk about scope, I talk about the brackets. Anything within these for loops bracket is within the for loop scope. In some sense, this P4 also belongs to main, but the for loop scope also belongs to the main scope. So I would look that up basically. Did I help you at least a little bit with that? Because here's the most important thing. I can't do this. Do you understand why I can't do this? And the question is, why can't I do that? Why is that not allowed? What will the compiler tell me when I try to compile this code? Why is that not allowed? Why is that not allowed? Well, you say P4 is not declared within that scope. I think it will... Look at this. The compiler is... the words, they're all coming together. Do you see that? Yeah, compiler says, what is P4? P4 was not declared in this scope. That's what the scope is, okay? So destructors are called when objects go out of their scope. When they go out of the scope that they're declared in, rather. When they go out of the scope that they're declared in. Can you stop that? Thanks. So the reason, that's the main, if you're ever confused on that, right? About scope, the reason we can't do this is because of scope. P4 scope is in here. It's not out here. Yes, yeah. Giovanni, I like that a lot. Scope is like a box. You can only access the stuff that's inside the box you're working with. And a little bit outside the box too. But you can't access things inside a box. I'll stop talking. I'll stop talking. It is a little bit like box. You can go outside of your box to get stuff, but you can't go inside other boxes. You can go outside of your scope to get stuff, but you can't go inside other scopes to get stuff. I'm doing like dancing here. Should have been a ballerina. So why would the destructor get called if it's in the for loop? Only one destructor gets called. It's this one. Only this one gets called. None of these exist. Let's look at the print. Let's look at the fine print here. Oh, it didn't like that. Let's look at the fine print. So look at the IDs up here. Do you see these guys? Do you see these guys? Look at them. That's, who is that? That's P1 and P3 and P2. P1, P3, and P2 are 100, 101, and 102. When do their destructors get called? They're the very last thing to get called. Why is that? Because if you notice, they're declared within main scope. And when does main go out of scope? Down here at the bottom. But this point P4, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. There's 10 P4s. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All of that stuff is within the for loop scope. That's only happening here. And so by the time we get here, P1 is still in scope. But then you go down one more line and it's no longer in scope. So 101, 102, and 100 have been alive the entire time. This is just some rogue point within the for loop. These ones up here have been alive the whole time. Does this make sense? Mail, can you please tell me? Does that make sense? There is a destructor called, but only the one that is allowed. Hey, go away. I can ban you from here, I think. I gotta go to moderator. I gotta open up Chrome. What is this? I don't understand how Twitch works. Where's that guy? See ya. Okay. So you can put the destructor anywhere and it will only eliminate the object after the object goes outside of the scope. Kinda. It never wants me to get back on Chrome. So, Cade, when you say you can put the destructor anywhere, that part of what you said, I don't really understand too well. The destructor belongs to the class, so it has one spot. The destructor goes here. But you can't control when it gets called. It only gets called when an object goes out of scope. So the P4 destructor will be called here because it goes outside of its for loop scope. Down here by the return statement, you'll see that P1, P2, and P3, their destructor is called because they go out of scope there. Every object has a destructor, just like every object has a constructor. All right. So that kind of wraps up the basics of classes. That's pretty much all we have on that part. Now we're going to go into inheritance next. We probably won't get to coding today. So before I move on, if you have any other questions, please let me know. Because we basically covered everything that we need to know for this part. All right. Looks like it. Now I gotta get off Chrome again before it kills my... Stream's been good today, no? Stream's been good. Besides that one little hiccup, I think we've had a nice stream. We don't have many problems here. All right. So that is classes. That is classes. I'll clean up these notes. I'll upload them. The code will go up as well. Now we're moving on to something fun. And that is inheritance. Let's see here. I opened up the wrong thing. Yeah, I did. This goes here. What is this? That doesn't look right. This looks more right. Okay. Yeah, aside from the audio delay, not a big... I'll get on top of that. I'll figure out how to ban people without needing Chrome, and we'll work it from there. All right, folks. It's time to talk about inheritance. Now, we're only going to talk about it today. We've only got 10 minutes left, so we're going to introduce it. But I'm glad that we got to inheritance today, because we need to catch up. So, the title of this CS202 topic is a two-parter, folks. It is inheritance, as you probably guess, inheritance. and composition. Inheritance and composition. All right. So let's start with some basic stuff. Let's see here. If I use Streamlabs, that's the one I think I have to pay for. I use OBS. I think I can ban people from OBS, but yeah, I'll just get a bot or something. Someone's asking me if I want followers or much more foot pictures. That happened to me, by the way. So if that ever happens here, I'm so sorry that you witness it. Okay. Streamline, I'll look into that. Okay. Now, inheritance and composition. This has to do with classes. This is a classes objects thing. Okay, inheritance only. Yeah. We don't have to go into it. I banned them. That's it. It's just ridiculous. This is a classes objects thing. All right. So you only see inheritance when we talk about this stuff. All right. Nothing else. So basically, we're continuing on. All right. We're building upon what we've already talked about. So we're moving forward. In some sense, you're going to see us repeat a lot of the stuff we talked about. I like that idea, Pig. Thank you. I will do that. So now, we need a few definitions. For one, we're going to start with composition. What does that mean? Well, it's like things are comprised of other things. Or themselves. That is a possibility. That's the thing we're talking about. Now this is a has a relationship. All right, this is a test question. It's a test question. This is what I like to ask. A has a relationship. What the heck do I mean by that? Well, this just means that one class includes a class. One class includes a class. Or a struct includes a struct. An object includes an object. And so how does that work? Well, a deck has a card. A whale has a heart. A car has an engine. Thank you, English, for your extremely complicated lingo. A and an. Okay? So this has a stuff. Now, inheritance. Does anyone know? You inherit from your ancestors. What kind of relationship do you think that is? Can anyone guess? If we're talking about has a stuff, what do you think the inheritance relationship is? What's an inheritance relationship? What do you think I'm looking for? What's that relationship called? I won't blame you if you don't know it, but I want to see if you can guess it. I kind of feel like that's a guessing thing. Male, you're ahead of me. Yeah, it does kind of get some of the old stuff. Like I got my mom's hair. I got my grandpa's mustache. I got my dad's height, right? Uchu, you're close. You're the closest one I like. I like that one. It's an is-a, has-a, is-a. Is-a, has-a, has-a, is-a. It's an is-a relationship. So one class is based off of another class. Had a, based off another class. So what are some examples of that? Well, let's think about it. A cat is a mammal. Cat is a mammal. What's another one? You could say, I don't know, hydrogen is an element. Is that right? What's another one? Let's think about it. There's some other stuff here. Now, inheritance, boy, yeah. Yeah. Deborah is a person. I like that one more than a boy is a person. I think the boy is describing something about the object. But you could say, yeah, you could say Deborah is a person. Now, here's a question I'll ask you. It's kind of a silly one. Is a person Deborah? Is a mammal a cat? Is an element hydrogen? What is the answer to all of those questions? It's a universal question. Is a person Deborah? Is a mammal a cat? Is an element hydrogen? What is the answer to all those questions? No! What does that mean? That means inheritance is one way. One way. Inheritance is one way. Is one way. Yeah, relations, right? It's a one way. Okay. So, let's just talk about some of the lingo, and then we're going to be kind of done for the day. I know a few of you I've got in office hours today, so I'll just say that real quick. I will be talking with someone right at 12:45, and I'll be talking with someone at 2. Let me know if you're in line, and if I can't get to you, just try to schedule something with me, okay? But I know that I already have 2 people for office hours today. If you need me, just let me know so I can add you to the queue. Chef asks, is composition one way? I almost wouldn't describe it that way. I wouldn't say composition and inheritance are like of the same concept. Maybe they are. I wouldn't say that. I'm going to just say no. I would prefer Discord DM. Discord, please. Yeah, and then I'll check my Excel sheet, but I did schedule another out of office hours time. I think that's you. If you were talking to me last night on Discord, then yes. So, just some of the lingo, we talk about a base class and a derived class. These are the terms that we use. A derived object is a base object. Right? And check this out. Derived classes have all of the members that a base class has. So someone said that. Who said that? Let's see. Yeah, male, that's what you said. It gets the old value, kinda. It gets the old blueprint. Just like all mammals have live birth, right? Your base class will probably be a mammal. Your base class will be a mammal. What does this mean? I don't know. I'm not a biologist, but live birth, I think. I think warm-blooded. We'll just start with that. And then derived class, cat. What do cats have that not all mammals have? Well, probably whiskers. I guess fur is kind of conditional. Some other stuff like that, right? Night vision. I don't know. So a class, the cat class has everything that the mammal has. And that's why it's a one-way. That's why it's a one-way trip down here. Let's make a fun little arrow. So, yeah, 9 lives, right? So next class, we'll be talking about inheritance, okay? So that's all I got for you today. Do your assignment. I think it's due tomorrow. I promise it's easy, or it's easier than the last one. I won't try to tell you that it's easy. It's easy for me. It's only a few lines of code. Please work on it. I promise you can get it done tomorrow. Okay? So, give it your best shot. Message me. Come to office hours. If you message me today, I'll schedule something with you tomorrow, okay? I don't want any, I really don't want to extend this one because we do have to kind of stay on schedule here, okay? So please do your best. And that's that, okay? So thank you for coming to class today. I hope you had a good time. I hope you learned something. And I'll see you guys all later. I'm not going to hang out for very long because I'm going to go talk to somebody in Discord right now. But I will see you guys next time. Have a great weekend. All of you. I'm just going to say thank you, all of you. I'll go back to doing the regular thing next week. Thank you. Have a great weekend, guys. Thank you all so much for coming. I'll check my memes. Have a great weekend. Thanks for coming, guys. I'll see you later.